So since we're very democratic and it's such a young space, so I'd like to get, audience to chime in immediately on this. So there's two fundamental things that I think we need to get first out of the weeds: how we get paid and how we use podcast for, and so get some consensus in the room. Do we agree that, podcast is taking a form of shape in the continent that is essentially helping us to discuss things that we couldn't discuss from mainstream media? And so it's helping us to shape a new place and a new space for us to discuss these things, topical things. And two, how do you think we're going to make money from this thing in our own ways, in our own sense? And those are two big questions that I hope that we can answer. And I'm told the answer is here. So by the time we're done with this, we're getting paid and we're using it. So the microphone is there. So if I have a gentleman here on the right, if you could quickly say your name. Yes, as it comes, you quickly say your name and go to your question quick so that I can get many sort of questions and things in the room. But as the microphone comes, please, Adele.
Because I'm very passionate about money.
I don't know if you're not, I can hold yours for you. I think it really helps to think of your podcast as a podcast, but at the same time as a media organization. And one thing we can learn from radio, traditional radio, is how to make money, because that's one thing they're great at. I think they beat TV and everyone else at that. So I often urge creators to listen to radio, not to the content, but to the ads, to when the presenters are selling things, to understand how do they package the content in features. Because all of those things, yes, they add a good listening. Your listener now knows, I've moved from the intro, I've gone into this space where Molly tells us about a car she saw, maybe it's a feature or something, or like a fashion something of the episode, right? It's a nice listening thing for the audience, but for the person who brings in money, it's a value pocket, right? So you need to think of your podcast as step back from the content and see where are the value pockets, or how can I create those pockets? And then you listen to radio and see how they make money. And then you think of your podcast as a new media company, because the end goal is to have you pitching for advertising in the same spaces Nation is pitching for, in the same spaces that, you know what I mean? So once you have that mind shift, you start thinking like a business person, and then you get passionate about money.
Passionate about make money, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Balongo Opere, podcaster. My podcast is called Revenge of the Forsaken Gods. Look for it. It discusses the things not taught by parents, teachers, and society. And Adele answered my question, but I wanted also to get each of your responses, because each of you have had direct exposure to podcasts that are making money on the continent. So for you, with your true crime, did it make money, or what opportunities do you see? Molly, you've had experience with people all over the continent and beyond. Your background is in business and marketing. Who have you seen outside of Adele who has a successful business model? Also you, Melissa, and Dan, you've done a lot of production. Also, yes. So one of you, ching, 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 ching. Thank you.
All right, that's one. Next question. Okay, let's start with Molly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a great question. And I think, like I said earlier, we are in our infancy in podcasting, right? So we're still, as a person who is running a hosting platform, I believe we're still validating the medium in terms of, to echo what Adele's saying, people are looking in more traditional avenues to make money because the structures already exist there. When you have to build out your own structure, it's not only just on impressions and views and downloads, you're talking about a very micro niche community of people, right? So if you're selling a product, are the listeners that on James's podcast the same as the listeners on Adele's podcast, and what do you weigh those at, right? So I think when we talk about people making money, there are multiple avenues. We've seen people do live shows. We see people making money that way. There are some people that are selling merch, even though in the West specifically. And then additionally, people go on tour, like Adele. I mean, there's a ton of different ways that you can add income to your pocket. I do think when it comes to making real money, right? When you're talking about a job, you're talking about consistency, you're talking about time, you're talking about credibility, trust, and all of those things are going to take time on top of working in a new medium. So I would just say the opportunity is there. There's a lot of people who are influential in the audio space who are taking the dive into digital audio. I think we're going to see advertisers in a more aggressive way looking to capture this medium, especially because specifically in Africa, Africa is the fastest growing digital continent in the world. Podcasting is the fastest growing new media in the world, and radio is still very, very prevalent on the continent. So we're sitting in the most exciting opportunity bubble when you talk about storytelling. Like, I say this often, and to make it really casual with you, Africans are natural orators and storytellers. There's nothing more fundamental to the DNA of African people than telling stories. All of us have experienced that. And we have an opportunity now to digitize it, to make money and take up space. And I think that's a huge opportunity. So those are some of the ways I would say you can make money.
Okay, great. So if you just want to make a contribution, just raise your hand, and the conversation will keep going. There's a microphone here, but I think to keep this conversation going and the question of how do you make money, I think we get into the obvious problem, which is institutional, sort of memory on how businesses make money and traditional media business making money. So there's a whole lot of relationship on how media makes money. No one just walks in, and say, the biggest advertiser in your country must have a relation with the media business, forever, and that's how they make money. So podcast is a new child that doesn't benefit from this institutional, relationship with media and the advertisers.
Yeah.
And that's just very central to it. So we, as we beat ourselves on not making money, we also realize that we have to make these relations, with the people who actually control the ad business, so that they know you exist. Right? If they're going to ask you about 10,000, listens, this is when they start listening to us. You have to do us, I don't know how many things you have to do for you to get 10,000 listens.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not going to be your 1 episode or 2 episodes. Perhaps you have to be like your 10, 15 episodes, right? So you need to build it as a long-term and as a strategy. But I don't think then everyone can survive with the ads, right? Not all of us. I mean, you're going to talk about horrible things, about some people getting killed, and I'm not sure an advertiser would want to put their money there. So there's be like, yeah, I can see you have 1 million listens, but no, yes, and security. But just to answer the question, but yeah.
I think there's another, area that's new, influencer marketing. So I'd like to ask Adele, what parallels have you seen in terms of, the influencer marketing you've done, and how have you, maybe seen how it can come into the podcasting world? Because both of them are kind of new. Podcasting is just a bit behind, right?
I think influencer. Okay, if you're an influencer in this room, I don't know you personally.
Speak your mind.
And I'm not
Speak your
trying to
mind.
hurt you, okay? Because I have my own issues with the term influencer. Who really is an influencer? Who's influencing you? But that's a philosophical panel. We'll have another day. I don't think it's sustainable. That's my only issue with it. I just don't see the framework. I can't see it as a business, so that irritates me about it. But I can see it as a marketing tool for your show, right? And in my experience, it's helped me convert advertisers who believe in influencing and told them that this is a more sustainable option of becoming an advertiser on the platform. So it's helped in that sense. It's helped in the sense of kind of converting or introducing, like what James was saying, we need to be able to make people in agency, people who are running brands and are doing media buying, all of those things, we need to get them to experience podcasts and to find the podcast that they love and to listen. And once they do experience it, then they can be helpful in selling it to their clients. And the last thing I'll say to your question, which is kind of linked to the earlier question, is insights and data. I think why influencing grows is because it's not only like a flashy thing, but there was data, real-time data that for a long time we didn't have. But that's the same thing podcasts have. And so people trade in value. So you kind of have to understand what your value is. It's in your community, it's in your content, it's in the real-time data your podcast brings, and then you go and market that, because that's what influencers kind of do. It's using that data. Yeah.
All right, and Dan, just before we go back to get more questions, there's the other question, the fundamental question of podcast, and which is the quality. You know, that's the whole selling of podcasting, as someone said, just, you know, two guys on a mic, creates this sort of, you know, language that they didn't put in work. You know, they just showed up and they put their phones somewhere and they just did the thing and then they went. Dan.
First, I'll let Mel say something, then I'll join you. Because you had a burning thing.
Seamlessly into that, yeah. I was going to just add to the question about, both your questions about monetization and who's making money so far into the podcast space. There's like a couple of examples from different countries. One is a Cameroonian run podcast called Tourism Entrepreneur, and it's very much, it's about the tourism space. And it's for the tourism industry. If you're not in the tourism, it's not two guys on a mic. It's panels, it's panels like around here and guests and talking about the business of tourism. It's very niche. So there, the value, as Adele was saying, it's very clear what the value is. People in the tourism sector across the continent value that, one, because it's the only one that exists that's offering this kind of content that's evergreen. It's just really sexy right now in the tourism sector. And so being sustainable, getting sponsors from within the industry, the very people who are listening and consuming the podcast are the ones paying for it, right? So that's one way to think about it. And there are a few other examples actually of niche kind of industry focused podcasts that they're already on the inside. They have the relationships James was talking about. So these podcast hosts are also inside. So that's what's working so far. Again, the more we kind of work those relationships, during our research last year, we spoke to a couple of people in the ad space, like ad agencies and also brands, people who are working on sponsorship on the brand side. And they literally just said, well, we'd like to, and we'd like to start experimenting, but where is the framework for measuring success? And they said, one of them actually said, the reason it's easier for them to convince their higher ups or you know, their decision-making committee to invest in influencer marketing is because there's already been that kind of established framework. Even though they know that anecdotally, podcasting goes deeper, the return on the engagement is much higher, so the conversion rate, if you're selling a product, is higher, and all those nice things. But what's missing is those conversations and that direct contact with people, you in the room, talking to the business side people there and speaking to them using numbers, because at the end of it, they might love the story and love it, but it's a business decision. So where are your numbers? And so I'd encourage you to to go in and break down the door yourself and have those conversations and learn from it. Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect 100% on the first try. No, it's go have that first meeting, have that first conversation, get the feedback, tweak your pitch, tweak your proposal, figure out what you need to do to get in there. Because have a passion for money. You need money in order to continue telling your awesome stories. Which dovetails, how it dovetails is because, again, the higher value your podcast is in terms of story quality, just the audio quality, how engaging is it. Think of it's like a TV show, like film. It's not just, someone isn't going to just buy into it, even the audience. You need to keep them coming. And if you're thinking about it as, because we are still in the early stage, right? So if you're podcasting now and your content lives online, and the growth is year on year on year, the more people are coming online, the more people are learning about podcasting around the world, about African podcasts. It means 3 years from now, your podcast, if you're feeling sad about your 500 downloads right now, think about it in terms of 10 new listeners every month for the next X years. Where will you be, right? The more awareness grows, the more the framework grows. So think long term is what I'm saying.
also for your stories.
No, I agree. I'll start with the production thing. First of all, the banter format is very popular right now. Everyone is doing some kind of banter thing. This is 5 people in a room, and then we talk. Did you see that thing? And then blah 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 blah, ha 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 ha. It's very funny. That's how they do it, yeah. So they're like, oh, that guy's laughing. Ah, you're laughing at that. And then there's this other thing I saw online. It's nice for now. It's nice for now because this is a new market. People are interested in that. If you're very funny in your delivery, because I think delivery is very good. Delivery will get you where a good script won't. Put it that way. There's a lot of people who are commentators and they're very good at the delivery. And there are some things I can tell you. The trick is speak faster and then create pauses. They say, you know what, I was thinking about this, and then it dawned on me. Really works, for those short videos for Instagram. So speed up and then have a quick pause and then put some weird random fact. Horses have 4 legs, this kind of. It will work online, but remember that the online audience starts at 14 also. So half of your numbers are 14 to 21. Never forget, if you have 1 million likes, 50 to 60% are 14 to. Anyway, it's a conversation for another day, but it works. But here's the thing, you don't have a sustainable working product. And I also want to add one more thing. Right now in our industry or in the podcasting industry, I think globally, the podcast industry is being driven by the personality. So if you're a very engaging person, then you can build a very engaging podcast. But that's not always possible for everyone because you could be dealing with some more complex subjects. And so the production time that you put in, which is not just a good quality mic or good mixing and all that, those are really critical. But the time in which you take to actually tell the story in a way that is special, that's going to be more and more valuable as we go down the road. Right now, people don't seem to care about it because it's banter format that's leading right now. But I really do think that in a few years, you're going to have to develop more. People like Adele don't sleep when she's in production. She's like 3 a.m. producing podcasts. I know, because she's a good friend of mine. At 3 a.m. she's recording at night so that she can capture that's when it works. Not everyone can do that. And what we are trying to do at Summerbox, we are trying to make you more consistent in a more predictable way without you being up at 3 a.m. But that means that we are able to provide a couple of things. Is some accountability for creators, which they hate, right? Because we say you have to be here by 5 o'clock. They hate that, right? The juices are not flowing at 5. But you have to be here at 5 because you have to create regularly, right? And then I need you to market. Every day I'm shouting at people about marketing because you have 100 subscribers. Where are we going to go, right? I need you to put a broadcast message on your phone. How many contacts do you have? You have 1,000. If we say you have 1,000 contacts on your phone today, and you broadcast to everybody, let's assume 20% conversion or less, you're going to raise your subscriber count today. So I have very little patience with somebody who's in the studio with 100 subscribers who doesn't want to push. So I'm like, so what am I doing? What are we doing here? Because remember, for Summerbox, we only make money when you make money, right? But we have all the costs today. We pay all the costs today, but we have to wait until you make money, then we can make money. So we really have to, as creators, because Adele's words are very important. You're a business. You have to think of it in that way. Marketing is a critical. And there's a level of shamelessness that everybody needs to get. Creators, you need to get really shameless. Like the guys who are podcasters here, if you don't raise your subscriber count by the number of people that are in this room, you have failed. You have to do it. It has to be, hey, I have a podcast. That's how it's got to be, because otherwise you can't make the money. One of the models we've tried to go back to the money question, Summerbox creators are making money. I'll say that. But not all our creators are making money. And we are okay with that because we understand that in the marketplace there's going to be differences, right? And there's no way that we're going to make everyone make the same amount of money. It's not possible. Some people I have a creator who writes proposals as if her life depends on it. She writes, I think she has a target every month to put like 20 or 25, and that's why she's raising the money for her podcast. She does the work. I can't do that in the studio. I have another creator who came with a client. So I was at this place, I spoke to this client, they're willing to spend the money, let's record it. So they're already coming in with the brand partnership. That's not something we can teach, right? So it's to a large extent, the network like Summerbox can help you, the platform like AfriPods can help, but at the end of the day, it really does take the creator themselves being at the very, very tip of the spear to take us where we need to go. And if you don't put your, I honestly feel, if you're and I know, I hear this every day, story na kujanga venye tunataka, I get it, but we're going to do one season on that. How are you going to make 350 episodes? I think Adele, this girl has the biggest podcast in the country, Adele. By my numbers, and my numbers, mine are the best. And she has the biggest podcast in the country, and she's like selling advertising, right? And she's broadcasting messages. Like literally, I'm talking to her about a project, then she sends a broadcast. Skip it, Adele, I'm trying to get you to do. But she's doing that and helping us learn that you have to build this community around your work, and then the community becomes something that you can sell to and sell to a third party, and it's really, really critical. So I would say whatever you do, ni kujituma, you have to be in.
Yeah. So sorry, I asked Dan that question because Dan works with a lot of more creators than anyone that I know, and there's, I think, a discipline away from this creativity thing that we like doing. Like the story will come when it comes, the feeling, the juices, and then the discipline of doing the work. Like it has to be there. Otherwise, we have no product. We can create anything. I want to take one final question because I have less than 3 minutes. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Arthur Asimwe. I think after Dan's intervention, I'm a little bit confused. I don't know. I risk sounding boring, but I come from a different world. I come from a world of traditional mainstream broadcasting. And I think I just want to seek advice from you guys. If you're a CEO of a company, a broadcasting company, 5 TV channels, 8 radio stations, and you want to enter into this space, you have the content, radio, you have content, you have sports, you have cultural content that people want to listen to, because this is on demand. If you're CEO of such a company, what sort of advice would you provide to that CEO to get into this space? I just want advice to take home.
Okay, thank you. Molly will give you an answer. Can I pick another question quickly? I need to leave because okay, you guys want to speak when you're leaving. This is the creativity we're talking about. Like the questions comes when they come.
I think questions.
Okay, so if you can spend 30 seconds so that I can pick her and him, and then we close this. All right.
So my point is really on collaborations, because I think we've talked a lot about, the creativity part, making money part, and I'm sure at some point the guy who is creative doesn't have the skills to raise the money at the same time. So, in the podcast, and it's new, are you seeing more of this? Are you seeing more collaborations within that podcasting world?
All right, Dan will answer that. There's a question there.
Hi, my name is Monique. I work with a podcast called the Busy Being Born podcast. So please, tumeambiwa, if I don't have all of your subscribers, I'll have failed. So please don't allow me to fail. Anyway, I want to ask, on the Kujituma part, we are seeing the growing nature of podcasts moving from audio to visual now. And I'm just trying to think, is it wise? Is it casting your net far and wide? Or is it one of those, my neighbor has opened an M-Pesa, so let me also have an M-Pesa?
All right, Melissa will handle that because it's about trends. One final question here.
I think James, mine is not necessarily actually a question, but with regards to the whole question of putting our stories all out there in terms of vulnerability and empathy in communication. Because in as much as we are talking about, you know, the whole question of commercialization of getting the money and all that at the end of the day, I think Dan mentioned when you're deep in a conversation, then you're supposed to actually put an ad. We should not forget the fact that we are putting ourselves into that vulnerable space that other radio stations or TV stations cannot actually do that. So there is a big congratulations to that. So I do not run any podcast. I, however, give out grants to different groups supporting vulnerable populations. Thank you.
All right. So there's a money person here who didn't ask a question. So please, okay, could you? Okay, I have to give yes. If you can, 30 seconds. I'm being pressed for time.
I'm Eunice Nyamichaba from BBC. So my question is for Molly. So what value would AfriPods bring to my partners who are in Southern Africa? Because we've noticed there's a trend right now where each media house is putting together a flagship podcast. So from that point, and the fact that they already have so much content that they have collected before and the stories they've done before, what value would you bring as AfriPods to these partners?
All right, so let's do this from that end as we come this way. Answer the question as you do your final remarks.
Advice to the CEO.
CEO.
Advice to the CEO. Call Dana Seda of Summerbox. Then we start from there. But then, what the second thing is also, don't look at the content as a finished product. The digital space requires looking at it afresh. So just keep that in mind. It's hard to package the morning show as a podcast. People do it, but it's hard. So don't do it. And then someone asked me about the M-Pesa thing. The social media space is highly visual. It's a very, very important and excellent marketing tool. So open your M-Pesa shop. Yeah.
All right, Melissa.
Advice to the CEO would be great. That's the model that's working now. However, what about the young people? All the changes happening really fast in the digital space and with the new, generation, just cultural change. So think of a way to start to invest in your long game again. And I say this because from our research, we found that the trends, the topics or the themes that are of most interest to podcast audiences in Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, who we surveyed, are the opposite of politics, current affairs, sports. It's totally not nowhere near there. So it might surprise you.
Okay.
And then collaboration, yes. You asked that. Definitely, it's happening and it's happening more and more. I will say so. As Africa Podfest, we are in a collaboration with a storytelling studio called the Lamb Sisterhood and a production, studio called Zaki Kwetu, and we're working on a children's podcast in English and Kiswahili called Kabrazen. And what that is this collaboration is allowing us to think together about the whole value chain. So the story side, everything we've discussed actually on this panel. So yes, it's happening. Seek them out. Seek out the people. And then video versus audio. I think at some point it's a choice for you as, artistically, because the deeper you want to go in your audio storytelling, I'm looking in this direction because you're in this direction. So for example, if you want to make a theater podcast, there's a whole soundscape and a whole different craft to really good audio storytelling, as James will tell you, and Dan, from having made those, which does not, at some point, if you want to go deep here, what are you also doing in video? So it just depends on what works for you and your community and what it is the vision and mission of your podcast is.
All right, perfect, Molly.
For the question regarding digital transformation, because that's essentially what it was, I think we're in a really exciting time for that. People are ripe for that conversation. And when you're talking to executives, a lot of people come to me as a platform trying to figure out, well, how do we make money? How do we do this? We have all of the pieces, we have all of the ingredients for the cake, but we can't make this cake. And I think the piece that's missing usually is authenticity. They're looking to have a brand show up in a space that it's a person. Like when I listen to Adele and Legally Clueless have these conversations with people in rural areas, I'm connecting on a very personal level. So I think when we're talking about brands, it depends on what they want to do, right? You have Africa Daily, right, from BBC. You have, so that's a news podcast. You have Case Number Zero, it's an investigative journalism podcast. You have radio stations looking to, you know, repurpose their content as well. And ultimately, what I tell people as we are in a new digital medium, you're going to have to fail fast and succeed faster. It's lean methodology. It's all about taking risks. It's all about leaning into the discomfort. And it's all about empowering the team, the people on your team who could ultimately be the next change makers and culture shifters in a digital medium. Are you comfortable as an executive putting someone's face in a position where they can grow? And a lot of people are not comfortable with that. So a lot of my conversations, and just to kind of lean into Eunice's to wrap it up, you are going to have to talk to your partners and let them know that this may take some time. I was on a panel with Adele. She told me it took almost more than a year to make money. Adele, who was on one of the biggest radio stations, who has such a compelling voice, who knows how to tell a story. If you're a brand and you're going into it trying to make money, if you're a brand going into it trying to capture your audience, what you're building is a community. You already have an audience. And when you build a community, you're looking to relate to people. And I think that really is the special sauce in Africa. Sorry, I'm rambling, but community is fundamental. Community is paramount to podcasting, and businesses need to look to build communities over just traditionally maximizing audiences.
Adele?
Okay, so just 3 quick points, which are my closing. The first, and this could go to the CEO or anyone, I think you need to start seeing your employees, especially the ones who are broadcasters, as content creators, and then you start sitting on a one-on-one and seeing what can they create that doesn't fit in the traditional kind of format, right? And why that's important, even in terms of a business, traditional media houses are not getting the revenues they used to get, so you need a leaner team. And one thing you could also be looking at in that sphere is reshaping your agreements into more syndication style contracts. So then you have content creators who create, and you are an amplification platform. So whether you do it on a traditional format, or if you build a website and you have more on-demand format, it makes you not break your bank because you're running such a huge organization with a tight budget. I think that's one thing you could look at. And syndication is also another way for creators to look at how can they make money. But for syndication, that needs sustainability. That's my second point, which means consistency. So I'm currently on Trace. Trace won't talk to you if you don't have 50 plus episodes. And I get it, because I had to change the format of the podcast. So I give them four episodes a week, right? So you as a creator have to think differently, because their platform is not the on-demand platform, but it serves their interest. In my pitch, I was like, you don't have to think of me as an employee. You don't have to do all the things the government wants you to do for employees. We just have a content agreement, aka syndication. You can look into that. And the last thing, still on sustainability, it's great to think about going into video, but the same way with businesses, don't expand when your neighbor is expanding, because you don't know the source of your neighbor's income. Could be wash, it could be. So sustainability means you don't want to start video content and then end in 5 episodes, because you can't afford it. So think very long and hard before you expand, or what format makes sense. We have a video series instead, so it's not the podcast is weekly, the video series is seasonal. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming to my podcast, friends. Dan, Melissa, Molly, and Adele, I have been asked to ask you to please go to Kilimanjaro Hall right now. It is here. It is written. But, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This obviously is a conversation that never ends. And I think from today we have more collaboration. Thank you very much.
you. You're welcome. Good job. Thank you so much. This is so cute. Oh, I was going to go with the microphone. I just heard my voice. I'm like,
That was wonderful, Adele. As always.
well done.
Having you.
Yes. And it was such a great conversation. I know you have to like run.
How do you keep your toilets clean?
I use normal detergent and bleach for washing.
The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus. How do you keep your toilets clean?
I use normal detergent and bleach for washing.
The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
So sorry for my dad. What should I do? You and I are going to get through this together. To tell you the truth, Mr. Marcelo owns the house in San Miguel.
You must think I'm stupid. Is that it? It had to be you.
Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review has got you covered for in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues. The Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched